So in the previous class, we discussed up to biguanides, that is metformin. We'll continue our discussion with the rest of the OHAs, oral hypoglycemic agents. Now, the next class that is present. So we've covered two classes of oral hypoglycemic agents, um, sulfonamide, sulfonyl ureas, and drugs that increase insulin release, which will include both sulfonyl ureas and meglitinides, as well as the second class, which is biguanides, including metformin. Third class will be thiazolidine thiazolidine diones. This is the name of the class. Okay. This class is also called TZDs. TZDs. Don't confuse them with BZDs. Okay. BZDs is benzodiazepine. These are thiazolidine diones. TZD समझ के BZD दे देंगे, patient का कुछ हो जाएगा. ठीक है. They are also called glitazones because the drugs that include in them are pioglitazone and rosiglitazone. Rosiglitazone आजकल use नहीं कर रहे हैं. So pioglitazone is the main drug that is used if it is used. Glitazone. Okay. Now this drug essentially acts as a agonist at one particular receptor called PPAR gamma receptor. When you give pioglitazone or any TZD drug, this fellow will act as an agonist at PPAR gamma receptor. So there is a specific receptor present on cells. Okay. And this receptor, when it is stimulated, it will induce certain genes. Essentially, it will enhance the action of insulin. Let me put it that way. It will sensitize peripheral tissue to insulin function, and it will enhance the activity of insulin altogether. If you are wondering what is PPAR, you don't need to remember it, but it is a gamma subtype of gamma subtype of peroxisome proliferator activated receptor. Activated receptor. ठीक है. PPAR gamma subtype of that receptor is present. So whenever this drug, or whenever you induce this drug, whenever you induce this receptor, this specific subtype of the receptor, it will cause certain genes to be expressed, and because of that genes, insulin action will get enhanced. Essentially, it will promote lipogenesis, it will promote insulin action, it will promote glucose uptake essentially. TZDs increase insulin mediated glucose transport, especially in muscle and in adipose tissue. They will decrease gluconeogenesis. They will lower the incidence of hypoglycemia. They have lowered incidence of hypoglycemia altogether when compared to sulfonyl ureas, insulin or metformin. इनकी वजह से जो hypoglycemia होता है almost negligible रहता, उतना होता नहीं. So it is relatively safer in older people as well. Okay. And it can be given OD because of its longer T half. Oh, you can give it a single dose per day. You can be given. There are no clinically significant drug interactions. That is also a very big plus point of pioglitazone, and it increases HDL. So there are four things that it will do. First is it will induce PPAR gamma receptor, because of which glucose uptake is increased. Glucose uptake into the cell is increased, meaning hyperglycemia will be abated. Essentially hyperglycemia को hypo कर रहे, hypo नहीं कर रहे, normal glycemia को लेके जा रहे. From oh, by the way, before we discussed diabetes and all, do you guys know what is hyperglycemia? मतलब जो levels है. I was assuming that you knew. I hope you know. What is normal glucose level? अच्छा, if I talk about RBS, let's suppose random blood sugar अगर मैं लिया, what will be normal level? This is very important. सुबह में बोलना चाहिए था ये, but I forgot.
90 to 140.
140 थोड़ा हाई है. मैं random, अच्छा ठीक है, okay. 90 to 130 is taken as normal, but okay. Nowadays Indians, मिठे ज्यादा खाते, मिठा लड्डुआ रहते हैं लोग, तो mg per dl. Hyper will be, rather than hyper, I would say which patients are at risk of diabetes? क्या लेवल रहना डायबिटीज ये कंफर्म करने के लिए या एट रिस्क ऑफ डायबिटीज बोलने के लिए? So there are two classes technically
More
important.
than 150, sir.
Pre-diabetic and diabetic. हाँ बोलो. There are two classes above this. So there are patients who are, see, because this is only normal, there can be patients who are in danger zone here, and there can be patients who are already having diabetes. So what is the difference?
200 type of
126 and up pre-diabetic.
What 126 से ऊपर प्री डायबिटिक बोला तो फिर ये 140 कैसा आता? रैंडम ब्लड शुगर बोल रहे हैं ना? अच्छा ठीक है, लेट अस सपोज इसको 130 कर देंगे. दैट इज व्हाई आई टोल्ड 130 इज टेकन एज नॉर्मल रादर देन 140. इंडियन से बोल के अपन 140 को लेके चले आ रहे थे, बट if you take the normal population, it should be around 130, 136, 130 के around रहना. So patients who have over 130 up to 200 mg per dl, this is all mg per dl, okay, mg per dl of glucose in their blood. So for every 10 ml of blood, for every deciliter, you will be able to find about 130 milligrams. Agar hai to it is still under normal levels, slightly higher but still normal levels. Over 130 up to 200 is pre-diabetic, and over 200 is proper diabetic. ठीक है, random blood sugar आप ले रहे, meaning the person is literally going on the road minding his own business. आप उनको kidnap करके, let us suppose मैं तुम्हारा blood withdraw करके मैं आपका RBS करता हूँ बोल के, let's suppose you do that hypothetically, that is proper RBS. Okay, you don't do that. Okay, बाहर जाके ऐसा RBS मत करो, लोग वहाँ पीटेंगे. RBS is when people randomly come, you don't let them, you don't create the scenario where you are asking them to fast or anything. You're randomly just testing their blood sugar. So if you perform RBS, दूसरों को भी बोल रहे, जब मत बोलो जाके किडनैप करके RBS करो बोल के, परेशानी हो जाएंगी. So when you are performing RBS, anyway, coming back to our discussion, when you're performing RBS, you're randomly taking a person, you're not asking them to fast, or you're not asking them to do anything, just randomly checking their blood sugar. And when you do that, generally आपका AQ check and all are RBS. ठीक है. Now again, it depends on how the patient is doing it as well. If they are not eating overnight and they are performing that, it will become fasted blood sugar. ठीक है. So वो भी एक particular scenario है. You have to warn the patient in that scenario, because क्या होता, कभी कभी patients हुशारी करते हैं, अच्छा blood sugar high आएगा ना, तो what I will do, I will not eat dinner, and tomorrow morning before doing breakfast I'll check. Obviously blood sugar कम आता. That is not RBS, that will be fasted blood sugar. तो उसके बाद उन्होंने दबा के 2 किलो आम खा लेते हैं, and that will be a problem. तो just warn the patient in that scenario. That will be fasted blood sugar. The parameters are different in that scenario. And anyway, pre-diabetic patients का इतना रहता, diabetic patients का इतना रहता. Hypoglycemia is under 80, 90, 80 के नीचे रहा तो generally hypoglycemia. Now the more severe it is, the lower it will be. That is why, because blood sugar levels can vary so much and it is harder to judge day to day, depending on the cortisol level, depending on their stress levels, depending on multiple factors, a patient's blood sugar level may vary, which is why HbA1c is used. What is HbA1c? Last year I think अपन पढ़े थे ये. What is HbA1c? Or what is the concept of HbA1c? अच्छा, अपन लोग last year we studied about something called glycated blood sugar, right? Yeah, glycated hemoglobin, sorry, not blood sugar. So what does glycated blood sugar mean? Glucose, most of the glucose in your body will not stay as is. Okay, a lot of glucose will be in relationship to hemoglobin. Glucose molecules will be attached to hemoglobin, and essentially what happens is, if it is attached to hemoglobin, it also means that it is attached to RBC, because hemoglobin is present in your RBC. You will not have hemoglobin roaming around as is. You will have it in your RBC. The point of measuring glycated hemoglobin is you'll be able to see the performance or the amount of glucose that a patient had over a period of 120 days, almost 4 months. Why is this important? Thode patients, what they do is essentially Let us suppose they are going to perform, they are going to undergo a random blood sugar test, or they are about to go their yearly checkup, health checkup, and they know that they have diabetes, or they generally eat a lot of sugar or anything that might increase their blood sugar levels. Now bear in mind that it is not just sugar that will increase your sugar. ठीक है, वैसा थियरी में मत जाओ आप. Anything, if you, especially carbohydrates, but anything fats, yeah, protein as well, if you eat in excess, that will be converted into glucose and it will be stored. Proteins maybe not, but if you eat excessive amount, generally it is very hard to find protein as is. Okay, you will find it in a in something else. For example, if you are eating, let us suppose, vegetarian sources of protein. What are vegetarian sources of protein? You have soya beans, there is tofu, paneer to a certain extent. You'll find it in capsicum, decent amount, uh, cabbage. Those are green leafy vegetables to a certain amount. Okay, so whatever food you eat, in that scenario, let us suppose I'm eating a soya chunk. In that, a small percentage is protein. अब मैं उसमें से खाली protein extract करके नहीं खा सकता हूँ. ठीक है, it is kind of impossible until and unless I'm eating like protein powder, like pure protein powder supplement. I will not be able to get protein as is. So when people eat more amount of carbohydrates or fats or this thing, again, you will not become fat only by eating more rice. You'll become fat by eating more. It does not have to do what we are eating. It does matter to a certain degree. For example, if you eat only cake and मैं इतना ही खा रहा हूँ, दिन में जितने कैलोरीज है मेरे 2000 कैलोरीज खाना है, मैं पूरा केक से ही सब्स्टिट्यूट कर देता हूँ, that will create malnutrition. It will create craving, and after that you will start eating other things in a lot of amount. So anyway, uh, if you eat carbohydrates, fats, or proteins, whatever you eat, the food that you are eating it, that will be converted into glucose. So that glucose generally will be in association with hemoglobin. And some people, what they do before they are getting tested, they will either fast, or let's suppose for 1 week, or for 1 week, as in they will not continuously fast for 1 week. They'll essentially act good, or let me put it this way, their habits of eating will become good only before their test. Okay, so if you check that patient's blood sugar level during that period of time, they will appear as if it is normal. From a diabetic perspective, normal will be somewhere around 160. That is also fine. Okay, 140 150 is okay. आप ड्रग लेके भी थोड़े पेशेंट्स को, now depends on what drug they are taking as well. इंसुलिन ले रहे हो तो प्रॉपर नॉर्मल में चले आना चाहिए, 90 to 100 के अराउंड आता. But if they are taking oral hypoglycemic drugs, it will generally be under control, but it will still be slightly high. 140, it will almost be pushing the normal limit. Now, because they are acting as goody two shoes, वो जरा कम आ रहा. If you check glycated hemoglobin, you'll be able to check their glucose performance, or the amount of glucose present in them in percentage over a period of time. For the past 4 months, what have they been doing? So it is a better measure of a person's glucose level, essentially blood glucose level. What is normal HbA1c percentage? Can anyone tell me? Normally किसके नीचे रहना? Yeah, what is the limit? अरे सुबह में ही आप लोगों को ये पूरा कॉन्सेप्ट मैं समझाना था बिफोर गेटिंग इनटू ड्रग्स. आई वाज होपिंग दैट यू न्यू अबाउट दिस. सडनली अभी याद आया तो. ओके, एक काम करो. Today's homework will be read about HbA1c completely. I've only like told you about the periphery. थोड़ा just tip of the iceberg बोला मैं आपको. Go read completely about HbA1c, why it is used as a better marker for a person's glucose performance and their glucose level, especially in diabetics, and what is the normal range of HbA1c. Is there any disease that will affect HbA1c? And आप स्पेशल पॉपुलेशंस में HbA1c कैसा देखते? फॉर एग्जांपल पेशेंट को एनीमिया है, या पेशेंट को किडनी डिसऑर्डर्स है, उसमें HbA1c कैसा चेक करते? That is kind of important information for you, from a healthcare perspective in general. Even if it is not part of your syllabus, it is good to know that, because it will come in handy. Anyway, coming back to the drugs, PPAR gamma receptor agonist, which is pioglitazone, whenever this receptor is being stimulated, it will induce the action of insulin, it will increase glucose uptake, it will decrease gluconeogenesis. Hepatic gluconeogenesis decreases. It will lower the incidence of hypoglycemia, safe in older people. There are no significant no significant drug interactions. Big advantage. Okay. Almost all drugs will have some or the other drug interaction, but this fellow will not have. So drug interactions normally whenever you are giving a drug, you make it a habit. Like when you are on clinicals, आपको जब भी time मिलता, common drugs which are being used, you can find it online. Like you have Medscape and there are various resources online. आप drug interaction checker बोल के मार दिए तो you'll be able to find. And up once you put the drugs, multiple drugs, you'll be able to find out what are the drug interactions that occur in commonly used drugs. Like for example, patients who are on PPIs, uh, proton pump inhibitors. Normally any patient you see, पहले hospital में आते ही उनको PPI देते हैं and antibiotic डाल देते हैं. Even if it is not indicated, they will add it. ठीक है, that does not make sense, but generally patients are given that. Sometimes it is indicated because later on you'll be adding more and more drugs and the patient will have severe acidity. To counter that, you are giving PPIs, and it can increase the chance of ulcer and all. So it is indicated, but PPIs will affect iron absorption, several mineral absorptions. So certain drugs cannot be given. So you'll be able to gather a lot of knowledge with that scenario. If you just check randomly, if you I'm not telling to check for every patient, but just keep in mind every now and then, every day, at least once or twice, up drug interactions check karte rahe, because drug interaction itself is a big universe. If you start learning, it is not something that you learn in maybe 1 month or 1 year. It is something that you keep on practicing as your nursing practice, and as you keep on practicing over the years, you get better at it. Okay. So even pharmacology is technically like that. It is not something that you are supposed to learn in 1 year or 6 months or 8 months. What you are learning is only a part of it. Its application will be much more bigger, and your syllabus is also very limited. It does not cover all drugs. It does not cover every class in all details as well. थोड़ा 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 बोल रहा हूँ मैं. देखिए आपका सिलेबस उतना है नहीं. So in that scenario, let me put it in perspective like this. uh, you guys are learning about pharmacology for 1 year, right? And the two some limited syllabus in 10 chapters. We had pharmacology for 2 different years. Okay, those साल almost 10 to 20 chapters each year, and in much more detail. So again, as I told you, and that also was not covering all of pharmacology. It only gave us an introduction to pharmacology at our level. If you keep on working in a hospital, you learn more. So things like that. This is something that you learn practically more than theoretically. Anyway, now other than that, pioglitazone also increases HDL levels, so it is cardioprotective. Okay. The
Which
disadvantage, yeah, I thought someone had a doubt. Okay. The disadvantage of this drug, main disadvantage is that it is a very slow acting drug. Pioglitazone generally takes about, any TZD for that matter, takes about 6 to 12 weeks to show its effect. So after giving the drug, it will take 3 months almost, to 1.5 to 3 months, for you to see its maximum effect. It will take some time, and it might cause weight gain and anemia. So technically you should not give it in anemic patients, because it can cause edema. It has the potential of causing edema. It will worsen or precipitate CCF or CHF, whatever you call it, congestive heart failure or congestive cardiac failure. It will be a problem in those patients. Monitor LFT regularly. It can screw up your LFT a little bit. It can damage your liver. In some patients, it will be more, but monitor LFT when you are giving pioglitazone or any TZD for that matter. Then there is another class of drugs called alpha glucosidase inhibitors. This is the fourth class. So alpha glucosidase inhibitors, इसमें आते हैं आपका acarbose, miglitol and voglibose. These names will seem funny, especially antipsychotic drugs, but you'll have to memorize them. So it is a tragedy and a comedy at the same time. So अजीब अजीब नामों के रहते हैं, even especially the estrogen drugs and all of them. But what to do? You'll have to memorize them. Over time, you will memorize them. Anyway, this drug will competitively inhibit an enzyme called alpha glucosidase. alpha glucosidase will be present in your intestines. Intestine brush border जो बोलते हैं, I hope you know what is intestine brush border. जहाँ से surface area will be highest, food is absorbed and all of that good things. So in intestinal brush border you will have an enzyme named alpha glucosidase. Alpha glucosidase is responsible for absorption of glucose. ठीक है, alpha glucosidase essentially will absorb monosaccharides, it will absorb glucose into your glucose, fructose and all monosaccharides into your intestines. From your intestines it will go into hepatic circulation, portal circulation, and from there it will enter your systemic circulation. Now if you have a problem of hyperglycemia, if a patient has a problem of hyperglycemia, if you are using alpha glucosidase inhibitors, you can inhibit the amount of glucose that is entering into their body. Think about it this way: a patient's blood already has a lot of glucose in it. After they eat food, see, hyperglycemia already hai, insulin is either not present or not working, whatever the case might be. Okay, type 1 diabetes hai, type 2 diabetes hai, whatever the case might be, insulin receptors might not be working, insulin receptors may be fewer in number, insulin might not be present, or insulin amount may be very less. Whatever that patient's problem is, our main concern is hyperglycemia. Now, after eating, it is obvious to assume that this glucose level will increase. Correct? After you eat food, let us suppose आप आज chicken biryani खाए दबा के lunch में. After an hour or two, or for vegetarians, veg biryani, whatever you prefer. Now, after an hour or two, what will happen is that food will essentially go down your intestine. It will be broken down to its simplest compound parts, and it will start the process of absorption will start in your intestines. Here, glucose is essentially glucose, fructose, जो भी monosaccharides are, those are being absorbed into your body along with proteins and lipids and all of that good things. So essentially, the patient already has hyperglycemia and glucose is being absorbed again. That can be a problem. So in especially in patients with diabetes or hyperglycemia. So in that scenario, if you are inhibiting this process, you are giving your body time to deal with this glucose altogether. जो ऑलरेडी हाइपरग्लाइसीमिया है पेशेंट को, see the patient already has hyperglycemia here, blood sugar level already high है. After they eat, now obviously people have to eat or else they will die. ठीक है, like literally they will die. So once they eat, obviously blood glucose level will go up again. Now this is a problem. Glucose level is already high and again you're putting more glucose. So in this scenario what you will do is you will give something which is a glucosidase inhibitor. Essentially it will not let as many glucose molecules go inside. Some glucose molecule will go inside, that is fine, but most of them will not be absorbed properly. These are given specifically postprandially. ठीक है, मतलब आप ड्रग जस्ट बिफोर ईटिंग और ड्यूरिंग ईटिंग, जनरली बिफोर ईटिंग लेते और इमीडिएटली आफ्टर ईटिंग ले लेते. ठीक है, what will happen is prandial is essentially eating. So postprandial means after eating, the carbohydrates that are being absorbed, that will not be absorbed. So it decreases postprandial blood glucose spikes. Normally what happens is after you eat food, blood glucose level will spike, and over a period of time this will start going down. Even in a normal person, let us suppose you have breakfast. Imagine you are eating upma, example. ठीक है, आप maybe 9 o'clock in the morning you ate some upma. ठीक है, उपमा बोल के उपमा खाए, तो आपके ब्लड में जो ग्लूकोज रहता पहले शूट अप होता विद इन. उपमा इज इजीली डाइजेस्टेड एंड ऑल, सो मे बी विद इन 1 hour or so it will start getting absorbed. ठीक है, there's not a lot to break down pure carbohydrate source. So when you break down glucose and you start increasing the glucose level in your blood, then let's suppose there is a spike in blood glucose level at about 10:30 11 a.m. ठीक है, over period of time that high glucose level will stay in your blood for a point of time, and by let's suppose 1 p.m. ish, that blood glucose level will start to go down. At that point what will happen is your body will essentially start looking for substituents. So when blood glucose level falls down, immediately you will not get hungry because your body knows अब अभी खाना खाया ये बंदा एक और बार immediately खाना खाना might not be feasible. So what will happen is glucogenolysis will occur or glycogenolysis will occur. Glycogen will break down, glucose will be produced, and that glucose, this is happening in liver, will be substituted in your blood. Over time, when that glycogen levels also decreases, fat will start breaking down, and to a point that is when you start getting hungry, when glycogen levels come ho gaye, and glucose is being used up, and by about 2 p.m. or 2:30 you'll start getting hungry again, and generally let's suppose you have lunch at about 2:30 3 o'clock, whenever you are having lunch. ठीक है. Now again, this is a random schedule that I'm putting up. I'm not telling you to अगर 9 बजे खाए तो ही उपमा ऐसा digest होता. I mean at whatever time you eat, it will happen in that way. Now 2:33 p.m. you eat again, it will spike and all of that. So postprandially you are inhibiting the spike by giving alpha glucosidase inhibitors. Because the patient already has hyperglycemia, you don't want blood glucose to spike even more. Okay, a little bit of glucose coming in is fine. Okay, but if if there is a proper spike, that will be a problem. Generally alpha glucosidase inhibitors are given with other drugs that will induce glucose intake. Okay. No common side effects that occur with this, because they are interfering with carbohydrate absorption, they can cause diarrhea. ठीक है. Nausea होता, diarrhea होता, the patient might have bloating and flatulence. ठीक है. Almost constipation like condition. Now these are four normally used drugs. There are a few newer agents that are being used nowadays. Those newer agents will have 4 different classes under them. You don't have a lot of detail with respect to them, so I'll just briefly cover them. Newer drugs. एक है amylin analogs. इसमें आता pramlintide. Pramlintide. One second. Pramlintide or any amylin analog, essentially, uh, amylin is produced by your beta cell. Okay? This amylin inhibits glucagon secretion. Now, if you remember, insulin is not the only hormone that is produced by your pancreas. Glucagon is another hormone that is present. Glucagon essentially does the opposite of insulin. It will cause hyperglycemia. So if this is not a direct treatment of diabetes, but essentially you are inhibiting glucagon secretion. And if glucagon secretion is inhibited, what will happen is that patient will not have hyperglycemia. They will, you'll be able to deal with that excessive glucose level which is already present, and you'll be able to use that glucose for the period of time where you're using amylin. Amylin is already produced in people. If you are giving amylin analogs externally, it will reinforce that mechanism even more. So the inhibition to glucagon is even more. Okay? Glucagon levels will be suppressed for a longer period of time by giving amylin analogs. Other than that, it will also have another advantage, which is it will delay gastric emptying time. Emptying time. Or it will delay gastric emptying. Essentially, it is increasing the gastric emptying time, and it will suppress appetite. What is the advantage of doing that? अगर appetite कम हो गई, and if you're delaying your gastric emptying time, or you're delaying gastric emptying the process itself, think about it this way. अगर if food is staying in your stomach for a longer period of time, it will go into your intestines slower. It means that only, no, if it is staying in your stomach for a longer period of time, it will not reach your intestine as quickly. If it is not reaching your intestines as quickly, it is not getting absorbed as quickly. Here the problem is hyperglycemia. There is already glucose present in your blood, quite a lot of it actually. You do not want to put any more glucose into your blood, or at least you want to slow down the process in which glucose is going into your blood. By this logic, what you are doing is essentially you're slowing down the intake of glucose by decreasing the गैस्ट्रिक एम्पटिंग टाइम ऑल टुगेदर. अगर पेट में से नहीं निकला तो इंटेस्टाइन में नहीं जाता, इंटेस्टाइन में नहीं गया बोले तो ब्लड में जाने का चांस कम रहता, और द प्रोसेस इटसेल्फ विल बिकम स्लोअर. आई होप यू आर गेटिंग द लॉजिक हियर. ठीक है. One thing is it will suppress glucagon secretion. Second is it will delay gastric emptying time. Both of them are advantages in patients who have hyperglycemia. Second new drug will be GLP-1 analogs. So glucagon like peptide बोल के एक molecule रहता, ठीक है. Glucagon like peptide are also called incretins. This is a naturally produced peptide in your body, And glucagon like peptides are released from your gut after you eat food. Oral glucose administration के बाद glucagon like peptide is released. The point of glucagon like peptide is whenever GLP-1 is released in your body, it will cause insulin secretion. So the logic is this: when you eat food, GLP-1 gets released. GLP-1, when it is released, it will in turn cause insulin to be released. It will enhance insulin secretion. ठीक है? अब पेशेंट विद डायबिटीज इंसुलिन का प्रॉब्लम है या प्रेजेंट नहीं है या इट इज नॉट बीइंग सेक्रेटेड इनफ. So if you give something like GLP, normally GLP amounts that are released are very very small, and it also depends on the amount of food you are eating. Let us suppose you keep on eating for a longer period of time, you are essentially giving your body enough time to secrete more and more amount of GLP. That is why it is told to eat slightly slower. आप पूरा भुक्कड़ों के वैसा एक साथ पी लेना नहीं खाने को. You have to eat and actually chew your food. ऐसा देख के सीधा अंदर नहीं डाल देना. So if you do that, your body will have enough time to get prepared, so that okay, this fellow has started eating, let me start secreting certain hormones and things. So GLP-1 is one such hormone or peptide technically. This peptide is normally produced in your body and it will cause insulin secretion. When a patient has diabetes, the amount of GLP that is being produced is, even if it is significant, their insulin secretion might not be enough. तो आप क्या कर रहे हैं? You are giving a drug to increase this. ठीक है? Glucose like peptide analog दे रहे हैं आप. Glucose like peptide, this is already produced in your body. You are giving an analog like this. ठीक है? Glucagon like peptide, sorry. So what will happen is when you give this drug, it will act like GLP-1 and it will enhance insulin secretion. The drugs that come here will be externatide, sorry, and liraglutide. और ये ठीक है, ये दो ड्रग आते हैं इसमें. Both of these will act by enhancing glucose mediated insulin release whenever food is present, hence glucose mediated. Food is present, GLP-1 is released, it will act like GLP-1 and it will enhance insulin secretion. It has some secondary effects as well. It will delay gastric emptying time, decreasing appetite, and it will suppress your glucagon release as well. Okay? So hyperglycemia does not occur. That is the second drug. Then there is another one, which is DPP-4 inhibitors. DPP-4 will stand for dipeptidyl peptidase. Okay? Dipeptidyl peptidase 4 inhibitors. This is an enzyme that decreases incretins. Now, I just told you incretins are helpful. GLP-1, the peptide, is also called incretin. That peptide is causing insulin increase. Normally, DPP-4 is produced in your body whenever your body thinks there is too much amount of incretin. तो आप क्या कर रहे हैं? DPP will inhibit incretin. ठीक है? DPP is a enzyme that inhibits incretins. Incretins are normally increasing insulin levels. So in this scenario, if a patient has diabetes, you need to inhibit this, right? Because you want more amount of incretins. If there is something that is inhibiting incretins, आप उसका खुद का inhibitor देते. So DPP-4 inhibitors will include sitagliptin. These are newer drugs that are being used nowadays. Sitagliptin is one such drug. ठीक है? This fellow will act as a DPP-4 inhibitor and it will stop the action of that enzyme DPP, because of which what will happen is incretin levels will go up. Incretin levels अगर बढ़ गए तो insulin secretion increases, glucagon secretions will go down, glucagon levels will go down. Lastly, they are SGL2 inhibitors. This is technically a diuretic. Okay. I don't remember whether we covered this in diuretic or not. This is also a new type of diuretic. This is a sodium glucose cotransporter inhibitor. Sodium glucose cotransporter क्या करता? See, diuretic क्या कर रहे हैं? They are throwing out water out of your body, right? So essentially they throw out water out of your body by absorbing glucose in its place. Water बाहर डालते हैं, with water sodium will go out and glucose is absorbed back inside. Hence sodium glucose cotransporter. ठीक है? So what you are doing is essentially if you stop that cotransporter, sodium and water will be retained in the body, but glucose will go out. Okay. Normally, the sodium glucose co-transporter, the receptor, the transporter which is present on your nephron or in your nephron, this fellow will essentially exchange glucose for sodium and water. Okay. So glucose is absorbed inside, and sodium and water are thrown out. Okay. You are inhibiting that receptor. Essentially, you are making sure that glucose is thrown out, sodium and water are retained. ठीक है, it will have its own problems. आप edema या CCF patients में नहीं दे सकते या hypertension में नहीं दे सकते ये, but it will work. ठीक है, you will have dapagliflozin and remogliflozin in this. Two drugs. ठीक है, sergliflozin भी use करते हैं, but ये दो भी याद रखे तो बस है. Okay, so those are all oral hypoglycemic drugs that are used. Acha. Now, next topic we have parathyroid hormone. I'll just cover the basics of parathyroid hormone, then we can get into the drugs in the next class. What is PTH? Matlab, it is parathyroid hormone that I understand, but what is the function of PTH? Can anyone tell me? Where it is being secreted from? What does it do? You don't need to go into detail. Just like single sentence answers will also be fine. आपकी आवाज टूट रही बेटा. Put in the chat. The question is, what is PTH and where is it being secreted from and what does it do? What kind of change does it make in your body? So PTH is also called parathormone. It is also called parathyrin. It's essentially parathyroid hormone. Okay, it is a hormone that is secreted by your parathyroid glands, and the main function of parathyroid hormone is to regulate serum calcium levels. It'll have other functions as well, but the most significant function is by regulating serum calcium levels through its effects on bone, kidney and intestine. मीनिंग इसका मतलब क्या रहता है, पीटीएच के रिसेप्टर्स आपके बोन पे, किडनी पे एंड इंटेस्टाइन पे प्रेजेंट है. वही मतलब है ना. इफ इट इज रेगुलेटिंग parathyroid hormone, if it is regulating effects of serum calcium or levels of serum calcium by its effect on bone, by the effect of the hormone on bone, kidney and intestine, it means that kidney, bone and intestine have these receptors. ठीक है, that is important from a pharmacological perspective. You have to think in that way. वो receptor अगर उधर present है तो ही आप उसको target कर सकते हैं ना. Anyway, PTH essentially influences the bone remodeling. It will cause bone remodeling. Bone tissue is alternatively reabsorbed and rebuilt over time. So PTH, which is secreted in response to lower blood calcium levels, whenever serum calcium levels go down, PTH is released. PTH will indirectly stimulate your osteoclasts. ठीक है, osteoclasts क्या करते हैं? They will break down your bone. Okay, they are responsible for bone remodeling. If you remember, your bone will get remodeled, or it will get, how should I put it, every year new bone tissue. Every time your bone is getting remodeled, there is action of a balanced action of osteoclast and osteoblast. Osteoblast will make the bone, osteoclast will break the bone. So you are chipping away a little bit of the bone and you're making up the bone again. So in this process, you essentially make sure that the bone is nice and healthy, new bone tissue is being formed, and it will stay strong essentially. PTH will stimulate only osteoclastic activity. Because of that, what will happen is when serum calcium level goes down, bone, is a reservoir of calcium and phosphates. If you start chipping out down your bone, that calcium and phosphate that is coming out will go into your blood. Essentially what will happen is serum calcium levels will go up. Okay, so PTH is indirectly stimulating osteoclastic activity in your bone matrix, जो osteon रहता है उसके अंदर, and what happens is your ionic calcium levels in the blood will go up. Essentially serum calcium levels are going up. PTH is secreted by the chief cells of your parathyroid gland. Okay, in case you are wondering कहाँ से आता. And PTH also decreases reabsorption of phosphates from your PCT in your kidney, the reabsorption of phosphate decreases. If phosphate reabsorption decreases, calcium reabsorption will start increasing. Anyway, if reabsorption of phosphate decreases, more phosphates are released through your urine. Okay, more and more phosphate will be excreted through urine. PTH will influence phosphate intake or uptake of phosphate in your intestines. Phosphate as well as calcium, dono bhi, they will be absorbed more aggressively if PTH starts acting on your intestine. So those are the three effects of parathyroid hormone. First effect is on bone. It will start breaking down bone to re-establish serum calcium levels. Whenever serum calcium levels goes down, it is breaking a little bit of bone, and not literally breaking, it is, yeah, technically it is breaking the bone. It is remodeling the bone by indirectly stimulating osteoclast, and serum calcium level goes up. It is inhibiting absorption, reabsorption of phosphates, so that phosphates are excreted more in your urine. And it is enhancing the uptake of phosphate from your intestines, so that phosphate gets inside your blood, and it will go into your bone and essentially make your bone stronger. Okay. So those are the effects of your parathyroid hormone. To a certain extent, it will also have an effect on vitamin D. Parathyroid hormone regulates the activity of 1-alpha hydroxylase. 1-alpha hydroxylase is responsible for the formation of vitamin D, active form of vitamin D. Okay. Now, in the next class, we'll discuss about calcitonin and some drugs that are affecting calcium balance in your bones, and what kind of drugs you give if a patient is having bone disorders. ठीक है, so अभी के लिए तो इतना बस है.